Welcome to God, Grit, and Goals. I am so excited to have a special guest today, Mr. Rob Rhode, who's going to be with us, and I'm going to introduce you here in a second. But what I want to tell you is if you are someone who is a single dad, or if you know someone who's a single dad, or you've had some tragedy in your life that has affected your family, or you are just really just trying to figure out how to be a good dad, Rob's the guy you're going to want to know. You're not going to want to miss what he has to say today. Rob, I'm super excited to have you on our podcast. I know that you and I have gotten to know each other recently, and I've just been so impressed with your story and with your heart for men and family. And you've got 5 daughters, is that right?
Yeah, that is
Five
correct.
daughters, ages
5
14 to
daughters.
28. So, Rob, why don't you introduce yourself to our audience, and we'll get this thing kicked off.
Sounds great. First of all, I just want to thank you for that kind introduction. I've enjoyed getting to know you as well, and I'm very excited to be here today.
Excellent.
So, if it's all right, I'll just jump right in and kind of share what led me to where I am right now and what has kind of brought me to this point.
Sounds great.
Awesome. So like most people who became a single dad, the moment that happened was a little bit of a shock and a whirlwind and just so many things that are going through your mind as a man. And I was struggling with that, and I felt like it was very difficult. And I was a dad who was always very involved in my kids' lives, and I that didn't change when I became a single father, but I will say it was much more difficult than I thought it would be. And there was this moment where I was in the car driving over to pick up my kids for their parenting time with me. And I remember there were thoughts racing through my head because there were some struggles and I wasn't doing things perfectly. My kids were upset with me, my older daughters in particular. There were some things that had kind of led up to this point. Our relationship was a little bit strained. They blamed me for the divorce. They were teenagers. I was working a ton. I probably wasn't around as much as I could have been. And, I was, as you mentioned, I had 5 daughters and I was in a small 2-bedroom apartment trying to figure out how to provide a home for my kids in that situation. So I was trying, but it clearly wasn't perfect. But I remember as I pulled into the driveway, I had this sense of kind of optimism and hope because I remember just thinking to myself, you know what, Rob, this time it's going to be different. This time you're going to be more patient. This time you're going to put your kids above your job and you're going to give them your undivided attention. This time you're just going to listen and not try to fix all their problems. And I remember thinking that, and then I saw their mom walk out of the house alone, and it just kind of stopped me in my tracks. And she told me that they didn't want to come with me, that they
Oh,
didn't want to come over for their parenting time. And it just hit me. It hit
ouch.
me pretty hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it was painful. I mean, at first I was feeling like a complete failure. My own daughters didn't want to spend time with me, their dad.
Mm.
And then as I was driving away, like so many of us as men, those feelings started to morph into anger
Mm.
and resentment and blame. And I was asking myself, why is this happening to me? What is their, and I'm embarrassed to say, I went to that blame game. What is their mom saying about me that
Yeah,
is
for
making them
sure.
so upset?
Yeah, that's where your head would
You
go.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
you
Why?
you were like they didn't get in the car, so that was a 0. Wow.
They did not get in the car. I had an opportunity. My younger kids did, but my older kids didn't. And I had an opportunity to try to force that situation or I won't say accept it like it was okay, but try to handle it graciously, and I chose to go that route, but it was not easy.
Yeah.
And it was hard. And as I was driving away, I started not just blaming my ex-wife, but blaming my job for all the hours I was forced to work, kind of blaming my older daughters for not appreciating all the things that I felt like I had done. And I kind of sat in that place for a while, for a good couple of months.
Yeah.
And, and then until finally I realized that I can't control what happens to me, and I can't control what other people do. I can only control my response and what I do. And I know that sounds super simple, but sometimes it's the most simple things that can have like this really large impact. And so I did that, and I tried to focus on that. And I won't say that everything turned around, but there was this moment when I was in my room alone, empty house. The kids were at their mom's house. And this is a couple months after that situation where my kids didn't come over. And I was listening to a podcast, and these words on the podcast that came across were, "How has your leadership contributed to this result?" And it wasn't a parenting
Right.
podcast, it was a leadership podcast. But I remember turning and kind of looking into the mirror, and immediately my thoughts went to my daughters. And then I asked myself and reframed that question: how has your parenting contributed to this result? And I couldn't help but absorb some of that responsibility, or a lot of that responsibility. And the reason why it was so important and so monumentous is that I went from a place of feeling like a victim, where all of these things were happening to me that I have no control over, they're just happening to me, to a place of feeling like a sense of empowerment, like I can choose my path going forward, and I can choose to grow. I can choose to improve. I can choose to take responsibility. And I knew I needed to do that.
Wow.
And so that's what I dove into.
Yeah.
I just completely dove into learning everything I could possibly learn about leadership and parenting and finance and productivity and raising teens, raising daughters, raising sons. And I don't even have sons, but I was just trying to learn whatever I could learn.
Yeah.
And I ended up getting my master's in leadership, and that kind of started my path down this journey. And the thing that happened during this process is that I started to change on the inside. And as I was changing on the inside, my outward actions started changing along with that. And the benefit was that I went from feeling like I don't have time for all of these things going on with my kids and maybe missing some important opportunities, to setting up my life so that I didn't miss these important events. And I went from feeling like I was always feeling guilty when I was at work, to feeling focused and productive because I knew that I was putting in the effort at home as well. And I went from feeling like a failure to feeling this sense of confidence, knowing that I was doing everything I can. And even, I guess, the best thing that happened is that my relationship with my oldest daughters started to go from a place of being broken to a place of mending and starting to reconnect. And that was what led me to where I am today. And I decided that I wanted to take what I've learned and take my experiences and use it to help other men maybe go through this process quicker and easier, and kind of with some steps laid out and some processes in place for them.
Wow. That's amazing. You hit so many topics here in that whole thing. And like just starting with a question, the power of a question, right? And how you took it out of one domain and you put it into another domain, right? And that our leadership and our parenting is a form of leadership, right? You're leading your family, right? And we don't often think that way. It's like there's This is why I call it dad mode, right? There's like work mode and dad mode. But if we do it right, it's the same mode. You are leading, right? Either way. And to find out that you took it so serious that you ended up, um, you know, did you get a degree? I can't remember. What did you say you got? You ended up getting a degree in leadership, or you ended up, and yeah, tell us about that.
Yeah, I went back and got my master's degree in leadership,
Wow.
in management and leadership,
Okay.
but with the emphasis in leadership. And I was just looking, as I said, for any way of trying to level up my knowledge. And I like what you were saying about taking one domain and looking at other domains of your life, and how can you take these principles that are good, solid, fundamental principles, proven, and then incorporate them in another area of your life.
Yep.
And that is really what my business is all about, because I I have a podcast as well that's called The Business of Being Dad, and I'm sharing that because it's called The Business of Being
Yeah. Yeah.
Dad,
I love it.
because that's what I believe. I believe that you can take proven business principles that have been effective in the workplace and take those ideas and utilize them to up-level your family life. And simple things such as, I mean, what do you do in the professional world if you have commitments or responsibilities or projects that are extremely important to you? You dedicate your resources to it. You dedicate your time, your energy, your money. You block off time on your calendar to ensure that that is addressed. You enlist other people to either provide you with support or to help give you guidance and leadership along the way to make sure that you're able to reach those goals. And you go back and measure your results to ensure that it's effective.
Yep.
And I think and that's not even going into things like values and vision and culture, all of those, which obviously can be extremely beneficial in our family life.
Absolutely. That is so good, Rob. Um, you know, I think so often what we want in this fast pace, like I want the, just give me the tools, tell me what to say, right? We want something that works in the specific instance, right? But there's kind of a hierarchy of what we do in it. This podcast and where you're going with this, there's a philosophy. Then there's a set of values. Then there are strategies. Underneath that, there are tools and tactics, right? And the higher up you go, when you're talking philosophies, when you're talking values, and you're talking strategies, those shift domains. They could apply to anything. And so that's why what you're saying is so powerful, because don't miss that higher level thing, because we want that quick fix. But you've taken some foundational principles that work across your life. And I think for dads that are saying, I don't have time, how am I going to do all of this stuff? Yes, there are really practical things like I've got to go pick somebody up and I've got to go do this. But even what you said about calendaring, the important things that are in your calendar. And I remember it took me a long time before I realized, oh my gosh, the things in my calendar get done and I don't have a single appointment with any of my kids. And it's like, oh, I need to change that. Is that kind of what you were talking about when you said calendaring?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, time blocking, and I block off time in my calendar for things such as family time, and setting boundaries around my work life, making commitments to be available for dinner every single night, that I'm able to do that.
Yep.
And but yes, that is what I'm referring to, is like blocking, like legitimately blocking off time in my calendar. And to some people that sounds, oh my gosh, that's so um like unemotional. It doesn't seem spontaneous or like it's from your heart. But I still have those spontaneous moments, but I wanted to make sure that life doesn't get to start going too quickly, where what for me are the most important people in my life,
Mm.
that they get left behind, or that my time with them isn't prioritized. I do not want to allow that to be the collateral damage for my busyness or my lack of planning.
Right, right. Excellent. So, I know one of the things that we had talked about previously was this idea. I know some of the things that you've learned in your journey. Um, and I guess I've got a question, because as you described this, and I loved another thing you said, is you went from kind of this painful moment to, especially with your older daughters, and you used the word mending, to a time of mending. I think we want to go from, sadness to happiness, but there's this, I loved that word. There's this process of mending. So kind of walk through that. Like what does that look like? How long does that take? What did you have to go through?
Yeah. I appreciate you asking that, and the fact that you kind of caught that, because that wasn't a word that was used casually. It did not, it was a process, and it still is today a process that requires work.
Mm,
And so I do not want to, I do not want to sit here before you or your audience and pretend that everything is perfect, because it's not. It requires work still today.
mm,
And there was some damage occurs when we make mistakes. And so the question is, what do we do about that? And so the way that looked for me was trying to continue to show up in a consistent way. And so, to be more specific, I might not have had, I lost time with my daughters for a while there, where I didn't see them at all, but I still was reaching out to them. I was still making it as clear as possible that I wanted to spend time with them, that I wanted to be there. I was checking in with their mom. I would sometimes send small things home with their younger sisters. And I tried to do whatever I could to let them know that I understand where you're at, but just so you know, when you're ready, I'm here.
mm,
And nothing has changed. And it also required me making amends and apologizing for mistakes that I had made, and owning those past mistakes. So that was a piece of it as well. But one thing that I committed to doing, once my girls, my oldest daughter, started coming back around, for it just started off for like a dinner once a month or things along those lines, is that I committed to myself to simply listen when they would speak, to not try to jump into the fix it mode, to not try to
mm.
give them solutions to the problems that I might be hearing in my head. Because as we know, as men, when we hear something, we immediately go to, how can I fix that? And then
Right.
as fathers, right. And
Yeah,
then as
I fall in that
fathers,
trap all the time. Yes.
yeah, it's so easy. We have to catch ourselves constantly. And that's true even more so probably for fathers with their kids, because that's a big piece of your role, you feel like, especially when they're younger, is to try to fix the things that have happened early on. And so I made a conscious and intentional effort to simply listen and just seek to understand. And what happened as I was doing that is, well, besides all those voices in my head that were saying, Rob, you got to say something about this. Rob, you got to try to do something here. Besides that, the thing that started to happen was that I started to learn more about my daughters. I started to
Mm,
understand the things that were important to them. And I'm somewhat embarrassed to say that I realized how little I actually knew them on a deep level. And so
I
it
think a
gave
lot of
me
men
an
suffer
opportunity.
from that. I mean, as you're speaking, it's hitting me to the core. Yeah.
Yeah. And it, so that was an unexpected benefit to going through this process. And when I knew that things were just maybe starting to turn the corner just a little bit, would be when my daughter started asking me for my opinion
Mm.
or asking me for my ideas. And, they might ask once and then not again for a couple months. It's not like, oh, they asked me and now we're all better and now we're all
Right.
fixed again
Now I'm a
and just
mentor.
jumps right in. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess I had to commit to being really kind of thoughtful and intentional in how I chose to interact with them. And again, that might sound super structured but I think sometimes we need that. Sometimes when things are broken, we need to follow a process and trust a process and just focus on the things that we can control. And we have to give it time. We have to be willing to be patient and willing to do the hard work,
Mm-hmm.
but also wait for the results to kick in.
Yeah. That's really good. I think we want to get it done so quick, or we want to show that we're there for them by showering them with gifts. I'm not hearing you say like I went and spent a fortune on them, or I tried to buy their love, or there's just so many directions that men may take in order to do that. And you're seeking true connection, and you are being patient, and that's so hard for men to do. And because you're giving up control, you have to give up, and that's what it sounds like to me, right? That's probably something that we wrestle with, because it's like, don't you get it? I love you.
Yeah.
Right?
You're giving up control, but also at one point I had to realize that I might never get the result that I was looking for.
Mm.
That was something that sunk in with me and was painful to absorb. But I did at one point realize or feel like, you know what, this might not ever turn out the way that I want it to. And I think that that's when it becomes very easy to just throw in the towel. And
Mm.
it becomes, much easier to just say, you know what, I tried, and
She just
here
doesn't
we
want a
are.
relationship, so we're done. Yeah.
Yeah, here we are 2 years later, and that gives us a reason to bow out if we choose to.
Mm.
And I'm not going to lie, those thoughts entered my mind, but I pushed them away and kept going.
Yeah.
And sometimes I would give it a little bit of time, a little bit more time before that next interaction or that next attempt, as maybe a defense mechanism of trying to kind of protect my emotions a little bit. But again, I also recognized that I played a role in it. And so this isn't all on them. I played a role in it. And at that point, I was the adult. Now they're adults too, but at that point, I was the adult and they were the teenagers.
Yeah.
And, I needed to recognize that.
Yeah. How do you know, like, if and when you should give up? Like, why didn't you?
Well, I don't have a very deep answer for you, but my answer is I don't believe that you should ever give up. I don't feel that that should be it should be on the radar. When it comes to, in particular, when it comes to your relationship with your kids, it doesn't mean that I mean, other people might argue with that and might say, well, I just can't keep doing this. This is just hurting me so much. I just can't keep doing this. But, there was a part of me that I not literally, but it's like if your kids don't want to be around, then I almost believe, well, and they're adults, you show up on their doorstep, you knock on that door and you let them know, hey, I'm here. I know you don't want me here, but I just want you to know I'm here and I'm going to keep showing up and I'm going to keep coming back because I'm your dad. I love you and I'm not going to stop fighting for this relationship.
Mm.
I mean, that's just how I feel. And I know that's kind of a basic answer, but
Yeah. Well, it, I think we have to have these like no-go zones in our life, right? Um, Like I'm never going to go there. That's a power of like zero, right? it's it's like I can have a donut every once in a while, or I'm never going to eat a donut. They're just two different things, right? And and so it sounds like what you've done in terms of building this relationship with your kids. No matter what happens, I'm still going to be there. This is you're my child. You will be my child for the rest of my life. No matter what happens, no matter what age you are, no matter what goes on, this relationship's important to me, and I'm just going to let you know that. Whether we see each other once a month, once a year, once a decade, I am always available. I am always here. The door is always open. That's kind of what I'm hearing from you.
Yes, absolutely. That's how I feel. And, you know, sometimes you have to take imperfect action. It might not always be perfect.
Yeah.
And my initial response might not always be what I would like it to be,
Yeah.
because emotions are involved. But when I have that chance to collect myself, to gather myself, and to kind of reconnect with my values and my core beliefs, then yes, that keeps me coming back.
Okay. So when family is a very important value, then this is much easier to do than if family is not that important of a value.
I think that's true.
Right?
Yes,
Yeah,
with everything.
for sure. Um, I was thinking, I just did a training on emotional intelligence, and what I've learned has blown my mind, because it turns out that emotions are nothing more than physical manifestations that well up within us. But those in and of themselves are actually meaningless. And they get their meaning from the stories that we tell ourselves from our past experience. So a quick example of that is when your knees are shaking, your palms are sweating, you are, your eyes are wide, you're in fight or flight. You could be being chased by a lion, or you could be getting ready to shoot the game-winning free throw. One of them is terror, and the other is pure adrenaline excitement. But what's going on physically is the same. And so what I've learned from that is that you can take those emotions and you can tell a different story. So you literally can change them. And so you can't get rid of the butterflies, but you can get them into formation, right? And so the meaning that you attribute to the experience that you are going through as you reach out to your child and they don't respond in the way you want tells you a story, wells up an emotion in you, and how you interpret that emotion will either break you or make you, right? And so you've had to somehow, in some form or fashion, tell yourself a better story. What do you think the story is that you're telling yourself as those emotions well up now, which is different than the stories you might have been telling yourself earlier? Because you said, I've made mistakes, I've done all of these things. Well, that's all true, and that's in the past. There's something new going on now within you that's probably a different story than what it was. Does that make sense? I'm kind of putting you on the spot here, I realize, but did something come to mind?
That's okay. Yeah, that's okay, because I mean, I don't mind sharing some of the stories that were going on in my head and the voices that were going on in my head in the past, and because they still try to surface today.
Mm.
It's not like they ever go away entirely. At least that hasn't been my experience. But
Yep.
what I do with them is different. And those stories that I used to hear in the past were, Rob, you are an awful father. Rob, you are a horrible person. They were these negative voices and negative feelings of true shame, of not just feeling bad for mistakes that I had made, but feeling that I was a bad person and worthless in that regard. And that was what was going on in my head for a long period of time. And if I'm being honest, those stories dominated my mind much more than the positive ones, even as I was going through some of this transformation that I shared with you before.
Mm-hmm.
But when those stories really have started, the stories that I have started telling myself is that, Rob, you are trying the best that you can. You are working every single day to be the best father that you can be. Rob, you are, and they are more of acknowledging the gain that I have made over this period of time instead of being so focused on the gap that still exists in my relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's been the biggest thing that has helped me. And so again, it's not that those voices have stopped entering my mind. They don't come around as often.
Yep.
Thank God. They don't come around as often, but they do still come around. And now I am usually able to reverse those and kind of redirect those into more positive thoughts and kind of tell myself a different story, as you said.
Yeah, that's good. Got to beat them back.
Yeah,
Not today, Satan.
I know.
You will not get
Exactly.
the
Good
best of
try.
me. Yeah, good try. Yeah, well, that's, I think that's so important. And I appreciate you acknowledging that, and that it, we think it's never one and done, right? We're constantly working on ourselves. It's just like exercise. It's just like motivation, right? Motivation's like a daily shower. It's like being self-motivated. So you obviously have an intrinsic motivation based on family being important, that I am willing to suffer in this way in order to make this happen, because at the end of the day, or at the end of my life, I'm wanting to hear, well done, good and faithful servant, if I don't even have the relationship exactly the way I want. So I applaud your stick-to-itiveness there. Well, I'm going to turn the corner here a little bit. I know one of the things that when you're working with other dads, and I know you have a specific heart for, single dads as yourself, we talked about the three pillars, and so kind of walk us through some of the things that you've learned and how you've thought about the three pillars. What are they, and how are they useful?
Yeah. So I believe that when it comes to parenting in particular, so as a father, that essentially everything that we do in that realm falls under one of three general pillars. And those three pillars are connection, protection, and instruction. And it's not a mistake that it starts with connection in my mind. So connection is that piece that where we provide a nurturing environment for our children, where we make sure that they feel seen, heard, valued, and loved as they are, regardless of what they do. And it also involves like diving into really getting to know them and to understand them on a deep level. And so what I mean by that is not just a matter of, okay, I know that you like baseball and you like, you know, you'll sit there and watch a Padres game with me. And so you must like baseball and, you like math and stuff like that. It's about really kind of being able to know their body cues, their unspoken cues when they are feeling like really studying them to the level where you understand when they are feeling lonely or they are feeling sad, or you at least know that there's something heavy on their mind so that you're able to recognize that and be there. And that comes through spending a large quantity of time with them and connecting with them and getting to know them on a deep level. I think when you can have that level of connection with your children, that is a deep and meaningful kind of lifelong relationship at
Mm-hmm.
that point. So it starts with connection. The protection piece involves everything that falls under that umbrella would include things like providing for them, making sure that they're safe, but also that they have their needs met. And, I don't think anyone has to tell us as fathers, hey, you guys need to protect your children. I mean, I think that comes pretty intuitive to us
Yep.
to stand between them and whatever danger might be in their way. But I think it goes beyond that by providing them a safe and secure home environment as well. And I think that that is a piece that maybe we don't spend quite as much time focusing on. And then the third aspect is instruction. And, there is absolutely a piece of our fatherhood, our parenting that involves teaching and educating them on things that have happened in life and providing them with knowledge. But where this goes a step deeper is involves like really teaching them values and teaching them, helping them provide them with a sense of direction and purpose and understanding as they get older how to identify their own values, even if they differ from your own slightly. And so really helping them like kind of dive into that and understand that. And I think that if we can nail those three things, connection, protection, and instruction, we are going to really be crushing it as a parent.
That's good. That's good. As you kind of go through, and I know you have different programs and things that when you're helping dads, are those kind of topics that you guys spend time on, drill into?
Yeah, they are. And, the reason why to me everything starts with connection is because when you are connected, everything else becomes easier. When you have that sense of connection and closeness, it's much easier to instill values. It's much easier to provide guardrails and boundaries around protecting them because you already have this sense of connection and trust built up. And by the way, that's true for all leadership roles, not
Right.
just as a parent. But yes, so a big part of what I work with other dads on are these three pillars, but it also involves just really kind of diving into helping them identify what their biggest priorities are, what's important to them, and helping them really align their actions and their intent with their intention, basically.
Okay.
So it's easy to say, okay, these are my values. My values are A, B, and C. But if I would be to follow you around for a week, am I able to see that in your life? Do your actions reflect that? Does the way you leverage your resources support that? And so really kind of dialing that in and helping people be able to come really clear on that. That's the starting point. And then from there, it's really much easier once you have that in place to really dive into, okay, what do we want to do in terms of setting guardrails or boundaries for your work life, for your family life, for your personal life, and then kind of diving into those relationships even further. And so those are some of the things that I work with men on. But I will say that I have found that there are really three things that all of us as men need to have in our lives to really feel successful and fulfilled. We need to have something meaningful that we are pursuing, whatever that might be.
Mm-hmm.
We need to have a meaningful pursuit. We need to feel alive. We need to be doing something that lights us up and just energizes us and helps us feel alive. And we need deeper levels of connection. And those are three things that I think whether you are, you and I, or whether you are that 8-figure, millionaire
Yeah.
that is trying to figure it out. Those are the same three things that everybody needs. And so I kind of have that. I really try to flesh that out as well as we're going through this process to kind of do check-ins. What is your meaningful pursuit right now? However I might word it. What are you doing that's making you feel alive? And how are your relationships? Are you feeling those deep level of connections?
That's good. Yeah. That hits home so well. Meaningful pursuits, feeling alive, deeper connections. You know, And then the other thing you talked about was that your actions need to match your intentions. I loved that. So what I've been thinking about this a lot lately is that our beliefs and thoughts and actions determine our current state of mind. What I believe, what I've been thinking, and what I do determines who I am, determines really if I just keep doing, if I keep believing the same things, if I keep thinking the same thoughts, and I keep taking the same actions, then I'm going to end up at a destiny. I'm going to end up where I'm headed. And so if I want to make a meaningful change in my life, then I need to actually adjust all three of those things. I need to change my beliefs. I need to change my thoughts, and I need to change my actions. Then I will actually make significant change in my life. So I'll give you a quick example because I've got a buddy who's trying to quit smoking. And so his beliefs are that I want to quit smoking. I believe that. And his thoughts are it's going to be hard. And his actions are I'm not going to smoke I need to go to 2 weeks, right? He's trying to break it down. But I said that's actually the wrong belief, because the belief that's going to win is the one that I have about smoking. I'm not a smoker. And so I have a belief that I'm not a smoker. Therefore, I have no thoughts of smoking, and my actions don't have anything to do with smoking. And so I'm going to end up at a completely different place than you are. And so until you see yourself as a non-smoker, there's no reason to count the days. I'm not saying it's that easy, but I'm saying it is that powerful that you have to believe something completely different about yourself. You have to change your thoughts. So who are you hanging out with? Where are you smoking? I'm smoking at work. Are there other guys that don't smoke? Yes. Well, go hang out with them. All right, we gotta change our environment, change those habits that like make you want to reach for that cigarette. And I was kind of seeing how that plays out, and how that's developed in your beliefs about yourself. That one thought that I'm a bad father, that's an I am thought, right? Those are the most powerful thoughts. And I'm going to relate this to the name of God. So the name of God as expressed to Moses, who was the first one in the Bible where God said his own name, Yahweh, I am. He said, I am the I am. And what kind of struck me was that when we say I am, we are using the Lord's name. And I've completely changed my thinking on using the Lord's name in vain, which I used to think meant don't curse. I now believe it is much more powerful to not take the Lord's name in vain by saying, I am an idiot. No, I am a beloved child of God. I am a good father. I am working on it. I am, right? My behavior is a sin. Like I've screwed up again, but I'm still a good dad at heart. I want to be a good father, but I may have made a mistake, right? And so it's okay to make mistakes. That's how we learn. All learning is through, we don't learn anything from not making a mistake, right? Everything I've learned is because we were talking about this earlier. All the tech I know is because it didn't work. I had to figure out how to make it work, right? So anyway, I really like what you're saying about these meaningful pursuits, feeling alive, deeper connections, and relating that to your beliefs, to your thoughts, and to your actions, and how the most important talk is the talk you're having with yourself and who you say you are, right? And it sounds like you've been navigating, adjusting that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, the words we choose matter, and they really do, especially the words we choose to use in regards to ourselves. And, as you were sharing those I am statements and how that, changing your belief system or changing the way that you think about it. I have heard that used at times, even describing like someone who is trying to stick with a diet, instead of saying I can't eat this cake,
Mm.
it should be changed to I don't eat cake,
Right. Yeah.
or right now I don't eat cake.
Yeah.
Which is what you're saying. I am someone who doesn't do that
Yep.
anymore. And I had never really, until you're bringing this up right now, I had never really thought about that as I was making those statements, as I was hearing those statements in my mind about myself, what I was actually saying and how deeply rooted those had become. But it makes sense because it is something that took me a long time to work through. And I've never felt like I had it all figured out.
Mm-hmm.
I never felt like, okay, I've got all the answers. I am the person you should follow my exact example because I've got it all figured out. But I am grateful that we do have that perfect example to follow. I
Absolutely.
am thankful and appreciative, and recognize how fortunate we are, those of us who are believers, how fortunate we are to have that example to fall back on. I shouldn't even say to fall back on, to model our behaviors after, to measure our set of values against, to, when we are questioning a direction to go or the method to use or the way to go about it, or if I'm considering giving up because I'm not getting the response I'm looking for in my relationship with my daughters, I have this perfect example to
Yeah.
fall back on and to take a look at, and to look at how he would have responded in those situations.
Yeah. That's so good. I was sharing a story of the picture of Jesus in the boat in the Sea of Galilee, and the disciples are all freaked out, and the winds and the waves are coming, and everything is right. And then he's sleeping, right? Because he's saying, we're gonna shove off, and we're gonna go to the other side because we need to get away from the crowd. He goes to sleep. The wind and the wave comes, and they all are freaking out, and they're like, "Wake him up! Like, don't you care?" and he's chilling. He's just like, he stops the wind, stops the waves. So we see that, and it's taught very often as a miracle. And they say, even the wind and waves obey him. But I think if you think about this metaphysically, if we think about this, that there are storms in our lives, there are things that brew up, and they come to, and they're in our view, and we look at God and we go, "Don't you care? Don't you care? Don't you care this is happening? Don't you care my daughter's not talking to me? Don't you care what's going on in my life? Don't you care what happened to me?" And we're an emotional wreck. And he's emotionally intelligent. And he's like, "It's okay. You're okay. We're going to be okay." And I love what you said, because he's the model. And even as a disciple, these were the disciples, right? And this is what was hitting me, is like, these are the disciples that are freaked out, right? And so we serve a God who is perfect, and as disciples, we're not. And the reason that we love John and Peter and all of the characters in the Bible is because they're so imperfect, yet they are trying to do better. And I love what you shared, Rob, is that don't look at me as the perfect one. There is a perfect one. And that gives us a sense of relief. It makes me like, hey, follow me as I follow Christ. I'm not Christ. I've got a hold of him, right? And so there's this perfect God who is who's the bullseye. This is what we're aiming at. And we want to take our shot. And as we take our shot at the bullseye, God's not judging us. He's the bullseye. And as we take our shot in this action that we take, sometimes we get close to the bullseye, sometimes we don't. And that distance from the bullseye to where our shot hit is sin. That's literally the definition of it. It's missing the mark. So we've missed that mark. And God's not judging us. We're judging ourselves, because we're like, I didn't I didn't do it. And there's Jesus saying, it's okay, try again. And so grace is the forgiveness of missing the mark, but grace is different than mercy. Mercy is, it's okay, I'm not going to punish you. Grace is, not only am I not going to punish you, but I'm actually going to reward you with another arrow. Take another shot. I got you. You're okay. Shoot again. And I get goosebumps when I say that, because that's the gospel to me. And even the disciples, so we as disciples, so I view leadership as discipleship. If you don't manage people, you lead people. I'm sure you know this, you have a degree in it, right? And to me, it's one and the same as discipleship. We think we accept Christ, and therefore I can do miracles. And it's like, no, that's like saying, I want to be a runner. I'm going to go buy the shoes and the shorts and the t-shirt, and now tomorrow is the marathon. It's like, it doesn't work that way. You have to train. And so what is the training of your spiritual formation? And everything that you've been going through as you share this is a spiritual formation, because as dads, we show up with a spirit. And it's either going to be a spirit of shame and guilt, or it's going to be a spirit of control, or a spirit of command, or a spirit of love. And so the training is, what are the things that we need to do to become more loving? And I'm hearing everything that you're doing is about, how do I demonstrate to my children that I love them? And as a disciple of God who is love, I am aiming at that. And sometimes I fall short, but Christ forgives me and gives me another arrow. And if I've got the courage to shoot again, I'm going to do it. And so it's given me so much peace, recognizing that I'm just another disciple in the boat who's freaked out from time to time. And thankfully, Christ is in the boat with me. And he's saying, I got this. And our thinking is, you don't care. And he's saying, of course I care. This is no big deal, right? And that's hard for us to get our arms around. So thought I would share that with you, just to give you a little bit of a picture.
Yeah, that's good. That's a deep thought, and I appreciate you taking the time to share that. But I think that the key for all of this is that, as you said, is that we keep moving forward in that direction, and that where we are right now is it's not the end of our story. There are still more chapters to be written if we do the work,
Yeah.
and if we continue to grow, and if we continue to move in that direction, then we can continue to grow. And so however we are today, that again does not have to be the end of our story. If our relationships are broken, we can mend them. If we are falling short in what we are looking for out of our career, we can mend that, and we can constantly be growing, both personally and as parents, and also within our careers and all aspects of our life.
Yeah, so good. I know that you've been working on, helping single fathers thrive. And so just talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So I have actually, so often, one of the most common things that I get asked by people, and I'm kind of paraphrasing a little bit, but something along the lines of, hey, Rob, I really want to be the best dad I can be, but I am really struggling to figure that out and still succeed in my career. And I don't want to feel like I have to give up my career in order to be the dad that I want to be. And I'm feeling exhausted, and I'm feeling guilty, and I'm not sure how to get there. Can you help me?
Mm.
Well, yes, I can. I mean, that is what I do. And I have actually created that is why the name of my coaching program, which has been called Single Father Mastery, I have changed it to Thrive as a Single Father, because I think that's what we all want to do. We all want to thrive. And so for your audience, I would love to be able to offer them a resource, a PDF that I have created, a guide that is called Thrive as a Single Father. And what it is it is a 7-step roadmap that will really help these men become clear on the single biggest struggle that they are having in their life. And it will help them address these limiting beliefs and their mindset issues that could be creating these barriers and holding them back from getting there. And then it also helps them lay out an actionable, a legitimate action plan that they can follow moving forward to really address those issues. And so I would love to be able to offer that to your audience.
Oh, awesome. Well, that is fantastic. What would be a good way for them to get that? I can probably put a link or whatever in the description, but what is that something they email you for, or is there a link or a place that they go?
I would like to share that with you so that you can just have that link right there in the description, or they could also email me.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. And what's your email address where they could send that?
It is Rob at Rob Rhode, spelled ROBROHDE.com.
All right. Rhode.
Yes.
I said Rhode at the beginning, so I apologize for that. Rob Rhode.
I barely even noticed.
Everyone does it. All right, good. Yeah. Rob, it's been such a pleasure. Any final thoughts, other things that we didn't cover today, or thoughts that you might want to share before we head off? I know we covered a lot of stuff. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed being here. I've really enjoyed this conversation and getting a chance to share with your audience. And I feel like we covered a lot. I think if I could just share just kind of one more final thought, I would just like to kind of ask everyone, what kind of man do you want to be? What kind of father do you want to be? Because we all have it within our power to achieve that. And that's really what we've been talking about throughout this entire episode is chasing after that.
Yeah.
And I think that it is out there and available to all of us if we become clear on what we want and we put in the effort and are willing to do the work.
That's a really good question. That kind of gives you a vision of what it means to be a dad. Yeah, great question. I think that's a great way to end it. Thank you so much, Rob. Awesome. I really appreciate it. And one more time, you've got a website people can go to?
Yes, it's my name also. So it's robrhode.com.
robrhode.com. And there's an H-E or R-O-H-D-E.
Correct.
Rob. Everyone knows how to spell Rob. Rhode.com. Yes, excellent. All right. Audience, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate you. And as you go knowing that you are loved and you are special and you are a dad and you were called to be a dad, and get out there and make it happen. We love you.